Shana Tova, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this opening of our Yom Kippur services with some words of greeting from Scott Wiener, who is the chair of our Sha'ar Vad. Scott.
Erev Tov. I have the privilege tonight to welcome you to our virtual shul. And on behalf of the Vad, I want to extend our welcoming blessing of Shana Tova. Tonight, although our synagogue is virtual, our Sha'ar community is very real and very vibrant. We are a community with roots that span out over 15 years. We are a community with a new energy that is fueled by our individual and collective responses to the societal and environmental challenges and threats that confront us. We are a community with an expanding catalog of events and programs that has extended our presence not just in the New York metropolitan area, but throughout all of North America. Our success has come from the participation of each of us, whether it's at services or participating in any of the programs or events. Each of us, each in our own ways, give life and vibrancy to the Sha'ar community. For some, Sha'ar is the Jewish home. For others, Sha'ar is part of a mosaic of their curated Jewish life. But it's important to remember that the value that we bring to Sha'ar is not measured by the length or breadth of the time we spend. Rather, the strength of Sha'ar comes from all the things we share. Sha'ar is built on a foundation of relationships and shared values. We are rooted in spirituality and fierce in our pursuit of justice. We are committed to shared leadership and collaboration. And as a community, we are relentless in our work to bring about sustainability to our families, to our communities, to our country, and to the planet. And as a community, we are committed to continuously evaluate our efforts to be a community that cherishes and benefits from the value of diversity. To be the community of our aspirations, we need each other, each and every one of us, to come and to participate. So I invite you to come to our new refreshed website and take a look at our ever-increasing portfolio of programs and events, and to come to them. I invite you to come to Sha'ar with your ideas and your passions, and you'll find a community that is ready to help you bring those ideas into action. And I invite you to come to Rabbi Dini at times of spiritual need. As we enter the sacred space of Yom Kippur and prepare to reflect upon the year that has passed and our aspirations of the year that is coming, I invite you to join me and include Sha'ar in your reflections. I invite you to think about the ways that Sha'ar has been successful and valuable for you, for your family, for our community, for our society, for the planet. I invite you to think about ways that Sha'ar can increase its effectiveness and its impact. And I invite you to think about the ways that you would like to participate with Sha'ar in the coming year. In closing, I want to express the gratitude that all of us on the VOD feel for your participation and your presence. Toda Rabah, Gamar Chatama Tova. May we all be inscribed and sealed in the book of life.
invite you to join us in lighting candles, to bring in the Yom Tov of Yom Kippur, the blessing of bringing light and illumination and hope to the 25 hours that we will spend together. We also, at this moment, light our Yortzeit candles, our memorial candles, as a way of summoning our loved ones who have passed, as we will musically in just a moment, along with the many others, to accompany us on this journey of return, in this journey of renewal. This moment, I invite you to, if you haven't already, put on your talit, perhaps to put on your kittel, if that is your custom. I'll share that I'm wearing a kittel that belonged to my late grandfather, Rabbi Mendel Lewittis, Zichrono Livracha, whose wisdom and whose courage I summon tonight to carry me and all of us through as well. In the Zohar, the holy mystical text of the Zohar, we learn that everything that is holy, everything that is serious, everything that we care about, everything that we invest ourselves in requires a summoning, requires the intentionality to call it to be, to call us into that work. And so we sing the words of B'Shem Hashem as we prepare to come before the Beit Din, the court on high. We summon our Eidim, we summon our witnesses to our worthiness of being forgiven and of being granted another year of life. We summon the angels, we summon our ancestors, we summon the planet, earth, water, sky, and fire. And together, we make our way into another new year. B'Shem Adonai Elohei Yisrael Miyamini Michael Umismoli Gavriel Umilfanai Uriel Umeachorai Raphael Ve'al Roshi Shechinatel B'Shem Adonai Elohei Yisrael Miyamini Sarah Umismoli Rivka Umilfanai Leah Umeachorai Hashem Adonai Elohei Yisrael Miyemini Yama Umismoli Lahava Umilfanai Rakia Umeachorai Afara Ve'al Roshi Ve'al Roshi Shechina Lai 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 Ya La Lai 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 Ya La Lai 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 I invite you to rise and to move to page 203 in Machzor Lev Shalem. On the left-hand side of the page, in the middle column, to the left of the main text, a meditation before Yom Kippur. And I invite you to recite this together with me. I hereby forgive all who have hurt me, all who have done me wrong, whether deliberately or by accident, whether by word or by deed. May no one be punished on my account. I forgive and pardon fully those who have done me wrong. May those whom I have harmed, by word or by deed, forgive and pardon me, whether I acted deliberately or by accident. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. We now open the Aron Kodesh and take out the Torah. We open Yom Kippur with the words of the Kold Nidre, absolving ourselves of any vows we may make this coming year and may not be able to fulfill. It's a very strange prayer, and one can't help but wondering whether in some way these words, this formula, devalues the sincerity of our repentance. Does it in any way make it feel less real? This year, perhaps more than others, it reminds us that life comes to us with no promises and with no guarantees, and that we can make no promises, we can make no guarantees in turn to anyone else. And still we strive to love and to remain loyal to ourselves and to others from within the limitations of life. We strive to forgive ourselves and to forgive others when our intentions fail, and perhaps even to forgive God, the one whose words created us to begin with and who brought us to this very moment. I invite you to remain standing, page 204, the bottom of the page. B'shiva shel ma'ala ובישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. Page 205. Kold Nidre Vesarei Vacharamei Vekonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushevuot Dine Darna Udishtabana Udacharimna Vediasarna Navshatana Miyom Kippurim Ezeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Kon Icharatna Behon Kon Yon Shiran Shivikin Shivitin Betalin Humuvutalin Lasharirin Velakayamin Nidrana la nidre Vesarana la esarei Ushevuatana la Shavuot Kold Nidre Vesarei Vacharamei Vekonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushevuot Dine Darna Udeishtabana Udacharimna Vediasarna Navshatana Miyom Kippurim Ezeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Kon Icharatna Behon Kon Yon Shiran Shivikin Shivitin Betalin Umuvutalin Lasharirin Velakayamin Nidrana la nidre Vesarana la esarei Ushevuatana la Shavuot Nidre, Vesare, Vacharame, Vikoname, Vichinuye, Vikinusay, Ushevot, Dine Darna, De Ishtabana, De Acharimna, Vediasarna, Nafshatana, Miyom Kippurim Azah, Ad Yom Kippurim Haba, Aleinu Letova, Kon Icharatna Vehon, Kon Yon Shiran, Shivikin, Shivitin, Betelin, Umuvutalin, Lasharirin, Velakayamin, Nidrana, La Nidre, Vesarana, La Esare, Ushevatana, La Shavuot. V'nislach l'chol hadat b'nei Yisrael, v'lager hagar b'tocham, ki l'chol ha'am b'ishgaga. V'nislach l'chol hadat b'nei Yisrael, v'lager hagar b'tocham, ki l'chol ha'am b'ishgaga. V'nislach l'chol hadat b'nei Yisrael, v'lager hagar b'tocham, ki l'chol ha'am b'ishgaga. Slach na la'avon ha'amazeh ki godel chasdecha, v'cha asher nasata la'amazeh mimitzrayim ve'ad heina, v'sham ne'emar. V'hayomer Adonai, salachti kidbarecha. V'hayomer Adonai, salachti kidbarecha. V'yomer Adonai, salachti kidbarecha. We sing the Shechayanu, expressing our gratitude for being sustained, for reaching this moment of renewal, this moment of forgiveness, this moment of blessing. Shechayanu on the bottom of page 205. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We continue on page 207, the Mariv service. Please rise. חושך ושחושך מפניהם. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני. Page 208. אהבת עולם בית ישראל ממך אהבת, תורה מצוות. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני. Shema is in the middle of page 208. In Yom Kippur, we recite the line Baruch Shem Kavod aloud. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levav v'chol nafshecha u'melecha. Ve'haya im shamoa tishma b'sari. Adonai Elohechem Emet. We're on the bottom of 209. We gathered together in the middle of page 210. Umalchuto beratzon kiblu alehem Moshe uMiriam uvnei Yisrael lechanu shira besimcha rabba ve'amru cholam michamocha ba'elim Adonai mikamocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehila osei fele malchutcha reuvanecha bokeyam lifnei Moshe ze'eli anu ve'amru Adonai imla le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov ugalo miyad chazak mimenu baruch ata Adonai 211. Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, b'ha'amedeinu maken el-chayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu uvoenu l'chayim u'l'shalom me'ata v'yad olam u'feros aleinu sukat shlomecha baruch ata Adonai hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol ama Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 212, the second paragraph. Ki vayom hazeh yechaper aleichem letaher etchem mikochatoteichem lifnei Adonai titaharu Gadal v'gadal shemei rabba be'alma dirach yirutei ve'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael b'gala b'zman kariv v'yimeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitbar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitala V'yitalal Shemei Kudesha B'richu Le'elah Le'elah Kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru In the Sephardic tradition, during the Kold Nidre service, verses from the book of Eov, from the book of Job, are chanted, replaying the Mishnah's description of how the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, in the temple, in the sanctuary, would spend the night of Yom Kippur studying Job's story, a book that describes the inexplicable unraveling of a man's life. On the one hand, this tradition suggests to us that our task today is not only to question our own actions during the year, but also to contemplate the mystery of existence and to renew our strength to live within life's inconsistencies and ambiguities in addition to living within our own. There's another thought about the appropriateness of calling to mind Eov tonight, Job. In the New York Times this weekend, some of you may have read it, there was a very interesting op-ed by Dr. Amita Kalashandran. And she talked about how the book of Job isn't just about grief, and it's not just about faith. It's also about our attachments to our identities, our attachment to our beliefs, to the possessions that we have, and of course to the people in our lives. Grief becomes a symbol of having to let go when we don't want to. It's understanding that attachment is at the root of suffering, an idea also central, of course, to the Buddhist tradition. But understanding that is what can give us a glimpse of what some of us might be feeling coming to Yom Kippur now in the midst of a pandemic. We can recall the jobs and the relationships and the celebrations that we had to let go of. In our minds, we can see the loved ones who were taken from us and who will not return. Even our mourning is subject to grief, not having been able to mourn the way that we would normally mourn. The thing is, she reminds us, Eov, Job, became a fundamentally changed man after having been tested to his core, she says. He's accepted that life is unpredictable and that loss is inevitable. Everything is temporary, and that the only constant, paradoxically, is this state of change into which we enter. So where does all this leave us now, she asked? As we think back to how our attachments have fueled our grief, maybe also it can fuel our belief in what is yet to come. Can we look forward to a world that is healthier and that is more just? She said that she believes it leaves us with this challenge, to treat our attachments not simply as the root of suffering, but as that fuel that, when lost, can propel us forward, as opposed to keeping us tethered to our past. That perhaps we can accept the tragedy and the pain secondary to our attachments, she says, as part of a life well lived and well loved. To treat our memories of our past as normal pathways, the purpose to move us forward. We still honor our old lives. We still honor all that we have lost, our previous selves even, but we remain open to what is yet to come. And after this cycle of pain that we feel as individuals and as collectively, she said, we pray that we emerge like Job did, with a greater understanding of ourselves, of our faith, and of our purpose. She reminded us also that the word healing is derived from the word whole, so that healing becomes a return to wholeness, not a return to sameness. Right? We're not here trying to find our way back to everything that we had or everything that we knew or even to everything that we were. But as we enter this first Amidah of Yom Kippur, filled with our confessions and our reflections, as we do Teshuvah, as we make our way on this journey of return, we seek to return not to what was, but to the state of possibility for all that is yet to be. The Amidah begins on page 213. We recite it standing facing east, using either the words in the Machzor, in the English, or in the Hebrew, the words in our hearts. haven't completed the Amidah, please take the time to do so. We'll end together by singing B'Sefer Chaim, the words on page 218.
B'Sefer Chaim, bracha v'shalom, u'farnasa tova yizacher, v'nikatem lefanecha. Anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael, lechaim tovim u'shalom. B'Sefer Chaim, bracha v'shalom, u'farnasa tova yizacher, v'nikatem lefanecha. Anachnu v'chol amcha beit Yisrael, lechaim tovim u'shalom.
Page 223, Ya'aleh Tachanunenu, an anonymous piyut, religious poem describing the next 25 hours that we'll spend together from evening to dawn to dusk, the totality of the day of the experience. Can't enter Ne'ilah tomorrow night until we have moved consciously through this evening, through tomorrow morning and the afternoon. We pray for safety on this journey. Ya'aleh tachanunenu me'erev, ve'yavo shavatenu miboker, v'yera'eh rinunenu ad arev, v'yera'eh rinunenu ad arev. Ya'aleh kolenu me'erev, ve'yavo sidkatenu miboker, v'yera'eh fidionenu ad arev, v'yera'eh fidionenu ad arev. Ya'aleinu yeinu me'erev, ve'yavo slichatenu miboker, v'yera'eh nakatenu ad arev, v'yera'eh nakatenu ad arev. Ya'aleh menuseinu me'erev, ve'yavo lema'ano miboker, v'yera'eh chiburenu ad arev, v'yera'eh chiburenu ad arev. Ya'aleh yishenu me'erev, ve'yavo tareinu miboker, v'yera'eh chinunenu ad arev, v'yera'eh chinunenu ad arev. Ya'aleh zichronenu me'erev, ve'yavo v'yigudenu miboker, v'yera'eh hadratenu
ויבוא אליך מבוקר ויראה אלינו עד ערב ויראה אלינו עד ערב.
I want to welcome everyone who's here with us this evening. For those of you who have davened with us before, on Yom Kippur, you'll be very familiar with my minhag, with my tradition of choosing a piece of literature to weave into our Kold Nidre service, usually a story. Tonight, it is a personal essay that I hope you'll agree is profoundly moving and touches on many of the themes that we bring to tonight's Kold Nidre service. If you're still standing, please feel free to be seated. This is a personal essay called We Are All Children Here, written by Paul Mandelbaum. I encourage you to look it up after Yantiv. I'll be reading an adapted version of the story, but it's well worth reading in full. We are all children here. Friday, November 4th, 2016. Stark and remote, the Marriott in Woodland Hills, California feels like a strange choice to host an international gathering, until one considers the conference organizers might be aiming to keep a low profile. Several decades ago, when this group convened in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, early arrivals were distressed to read on their motel's marquee, "Welcome, Holocaust survivors." My mother was a survivor, and in one of her fitful yearnings for community, she attended that long-ago event. I, her lone descendant, have come this year for a number of reasons. Because today would have been her 93rd birthday. Because the venue this time is just an hour from my home in Culver City. Because I need a break from the presidential campaign, which is in its toxic last days. And from my students, who seem less motivated and alert this semester, maybe owing to the same campaign. And because my mother-in-law, a survivor like Mom, would like the company, but my wife has to work. Lurking beneath all these rationales, however, lies a thornier motive. I was never able to answer my mother when she asked how her Holocaust experience had affected me, and she deserves my good faith attempt, albeit these many years late. My mother-in-law greets me with an impish smile when I arrive at her condo to pick her up. Mom Song, I call her. She married, then divorced a Korean man, but kept his last name to match her children's. Before we leave, she embarks on a prolonged last-minute inspection of her place, then asks if there's time for me to solve her most recent computer problem. One might almost think she were stalling. Though attending this conference was her idea, and though she's been to smaller ones before, 3 solid days on the subject could easily overwhelm her. Call me, my wife says, if she starts to lose it. I've privately vowed to show my mother-in-law patience, something I often failed to do with my own mother in her last years. In a way, Mom Song offers me a second chance, ready to accept whatever amends I'm prepared to make. Hitting the road at last, we managed to outrun LA's apocalyptic Friday afternoon rush hour and make it to the Woodland Hills Marriott with time to spare. In the lobby, we wait in line to receive our IDs and souvenir totes, blue bags printed with a slogan that delicately conveys the event's theme, Generations Together. We've reserved 2 rooms at the hotel. Mom Song picks the one she prefers, and I agree to come get her in an hour for the Friday night Shabbat service, marking the start of the Sabbath. 1 floor below her, I settle into my room and resist the temptation to check CNN. Despite the FBI's public reopening of its investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, she is still projected to win. I regret that my mother won't have lived to see America's first woman president, but at least she's been spared the Trump campaign, with its demonizing of undocumented immigrants. She was once an illegal alien herself in France. After unpacking, I find a Starbucks in the lobby, and the woman next to me in line asks where I've traveled from and with whom. When I tell her I've brought my mother-in-law, the woman exclaims, "Oh, what a good son." The intensity of my gratitude for this compliment catches me by surprise, and I wonder, if my mother were watching over this exchange, would she agree that I'm a good son? She once remarked on other women's sons being good providers. She was disappointed that my first marriage lasted only a year. And then there were all the ways I failed her during her final illness. So I have my doubts. Page 225, Haneshama Lach.
הנשמה לך והגוף פלח חוסה על המלאך הנשמה לך והגוף פלח חוסה על המלאך הנשמה לך והגוף שלך אדוני עשה למען שמך הנשמה לך והגוף שלך אדוני עשה למען שמך לה 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 שמך אדוני עשה למען שמך בעבור כבוד שמך כי החנון ורחום שמך למען שמך אדוני וסלחת לעווננו כי רב הוא דרכך אלוהינו להעריך אפיך לרעים ולטובים והיא תהילתך למענך אלוהינו עשה ולא לנו ראה מידתנו דלים וריקים תעלה רוחה לנידף תנחם על עפר ואפר תשליך חטאינו ותחון במעשיך תראה כאין איש עשה עמנו צדקה. Page 226. אליך אפיים אתה תאזין שבתנו ותקשיב מנו מאמר כי יום ויקרא בשם אדוני ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוסר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונגד. וסלחת לעווננו לחטאתנו, נחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחלנו מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך. Mom Song collects her generations together tote, and we set out to find the Shabbat service. Though both my parents were born Jewish, we were never religious. In all my 57 years, tonight marks my first Shabbat service, and I'm a little nervous. As we await the arrival of the rabbi, a middle-aged woman introduced herself to Mom Song and me, saying she learned about the conference just days ago. Her embrace of Judaism is fairly new. Previously, she went through a Sufi phase, followed by an exclusive devotion to science.
Finally, when she turned 60, she celebrated her bat mitzvah. Having found her path at last, she radiates joy and serenity that I envy. In the grand ballroom, Mom Song and I wait for dinner with more than 500 other attendees, many of whom have come a lot farther than my 22 miles. From most of the states, as well as Canada, France, Peru, Poland, the Netherlands, Croatia, Australia, and of course, Israel. One of the conference organizers, a stylish woman in her late 70s, takes the podium and attempts to shush the boisterous crowd. Losing patience, she finally snaps, "I know we're all children here, but can we please listen to a few instructions? How did we make it through the horror if we didn't listen?" Well, that quiets the room. A few eyebrows rise at such casual mention of the horror. But it's the remark's preference, "I know we're all children here," that puzzles me. Then I get it. The survivors among us were all children during the Holocaust. I'll soon learn that child survivors often felt their wartime trauma was discounted because they'd been just kids at the time and supposedly lacked the capacity to fully appreciate the tragedy. They were allowed to be victims, one guest speaker will explain, but the term survivor was reserved for adults, in particular those who'd endured the death camps. This organization, the World Federation of Jewish Child Survivors of the Holocaust and Descendants, refers to any living Jew who was directly hurt by the Nazis as a survivor. After dinner, Mom Song attends a breakout group for Dutch survivors, while I head to an orientation for first-timers. There, the woman who shushed the crowd at dinner recounts some of the group's history before asking us why we've chosen to come this year. A rabbi sitting near me responds with a question of her own. "What took me so long?" she asks. "What have I been avoiding?" "The perfect place to start," I hear my mother whispering in my head. She was a therapist, and her training and temperament inclined her toward honesty in all cases. I admired this about her, but sometimes it caused me discomfort, like the times she asked how I'd been affected by her Holocaust experience. I simply had no answer. I may even have believed it hadn't affected me at all. Page 227, Ki Hine Chomer. When we get to this piyut every Kold Nidre, I can't help but think about the words of Rumi. "With every breath I plant the seeds of devotion. I am a farmer of the heart. Day and night I see the face of union. I am the mirror of God. Every moment I shape my destiny with chisel. I am the carpenter of my own soul." Ki Hine Chomer. Ki Hine Chomer beyad hayotzer birtzoto marchiv uvirtzoto mekatzer kein anachnu beyadecha chesed notzer labrit habeit ve'al tefen layetzer ki hine ka'even beyad hamsatet birtzoto oches uvirtzoto mechatet kein anachnu beyadecha mechayeh u'emotet labrit habeit ve'al tefen layetzer ki hine kagarzen beyadecha rash birtzoto dibek la'or uvirtzoto peirash kein anachnu beyadecha tomech ani larash labrit habeit ve'al tefen layetzer ki hine kahege beyad hamalach birtzoto oches uvirtzoto shilach kein anachnu beyadecha el tov v'salach labrit habeit ve'al tefen layetzer ki hine kazchuchit beyad hamezageg birtzoto
ברצותו ממוגג. כן אנחנו בידך, ברצותו בשגג. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תבן ליצר. כי הנה כירייה ביד הרוקם, ברצותו מאשר וברצותו מעקם. כן אנחנו בידך, אלחנו ונוקם. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף. כן אנחנו בידך, ממציא למזור טרף. לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר.
Page 229.
אל המלך יושב על כיסא רחמים. אל הורית לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שהודעת לנו מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו, ויקרא אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד באמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטאה ונקה. וסלחת לעווננו לחטאתנו, נחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל הקורך.
On a summer day in 1942, when she was just 18, my future mother returned to her family's apartment on the Boulevard de Strasbourg in Paris and found her own mother outside, frantically pacing the sidewalk. "Hurry, Shella," she said, "your father's been taken." After fleeing Romania 3 years earlier, they'd moved to Paris not long before the Nazis invaded northern France. During the summer of 1942, thousands of Jews living in the capital were deported to concentration camps, eventually to be gassed. But police had yet to round up the Romanian Jewish refugees. Rather, my grandfather was arrested because someone had denounced him personally. His wife and daughter rushed to the police prefecture across from the Notre Dame Cathedral, where my mother, the more fluent in French of the two, cornered a detective and demanded he produce Reuben Zelzer, her father. Noticing the Jewish star on her lapel, the cop told her to mind her manners if she didn't want to end up behind bars too. Eventually, however, my grandfather was brought out. He tearfully hugged his family and accepted the care package his wife had brought. But his instructions were for my mother alone. "Go talk to the Germans," he begged, hoping they might overrule the French for having arrested a Romanian too soon. Talk to the Germans? Was her father really asking her to risk her own freedom and possibly her life for such a hopeless plan? Nevertheless, my mother set out across town for the German High Command, headquartered in the elegant Hotel de Crillon. Unsure whom to speak to or exactly what to say, she asked for the commandant and was directed to the second floor. At the top of a winding marble staircase, she found an imposing room occupied by 2 German officers and began to blurt out her story. With a look of disbelief, the officer in charge interrupted her. If she knew what was good for her, he warned, she should turn around and leave at once. Aware that her life had just been spared, my mother raced back down the stairs and out into the warm sunshine. She felt elated. I had done my duty, my crazy duty, she'd recall for me, and had thereby freed herself from a regret that would have haunted her always. Having done so was, in her words, the greatest feeling in the world. Some weeks later, when the police did go after the Romanian Jews, she and her mother went into hiding. They never saw my grandfather again. But despite the hardships and the constant risk, my mother managed to make surviving the Nazi occupation sound almost like an adventure. She continued to love France, and even after she moved to the US following the war, she'd return to visit as often as possible. Page 231. Page 231. The bottom of the page, a piyut that we'll read in the English. Adonai, where shall I find you? High and hidden is your place, and where shall I not find you? The world is full of your glory. I sought your closeness, I called to you with all my heart, and going out to meet you, I found you coming toward me. Page 233, Shema Kolenu. As the ark is opened, we rise.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chus v'rachem aleinu v'kabel berachamim uvratzon et tefilateinu Hashivenu Adonai Eilecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem Hashivenu Adonai Eilecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu kekedem Al tashlichenu milvanecha beruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu Al tashlichenu ein zikna kichlot kochenu al tazveinu Yalla la 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 Yalla la 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 Yalla la 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 Yalla la 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 Yalla la 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 Al tazveinu Adonai Eloheinu Al tirchak mimenu Asay manuot l'tova v'yirusonenu ve'yavoshu Ki ata Adonai azartanu v'nichamtanu Amarenu azina Adonai bina gigenu Yula ratzon nimrei finu v'yegon libenu lefanecha Adonai tzurenu v'goalenu Ki lecha Adonai ochalnu Ata ta'aneh Adonai Eloheinu The ark is closed. Page 234, Ki anu amecha. Eloheinu v'Eloi avotenu v'imotenu, selach lanu, mecha lanu, kaper lanu. Ki anu amecha, ve'ata Eloheinu, anu vanecha, ve'ata
Saturday, November 5. I sit down to breakfast and meet a spry octogenarian in a jaunty fisherman's cap who introduces himself by recounting how Kindertransport, an organized effort to rescue Jewish children from the Nazis, whisked him to England when he was 10, but left his 14-year-old sister behind to perish with their parents. It's been the problem of my life, he says. Such brutal synopses are what attendees refer to as a person's family story. The tablemate to my left recounts how her parents, rebels based in the Polish forests, tried to reclaim her sister after the war and ultimately had to kidnap her. My family story is very interesting, she says, before quickly adding, everyone's is interesting, but my family's especially because they resisted. They weren't victims. I'm struck by the woman's understandable pride and the humble impulse to assign status, even in suffering. That we should privilege survival over victimhood, resistance over survival, feels both natural and at the same time unseemly. Nonetheless, this is exactly how my mother would often prioritize her wartime experience and how I've repeated it. Her heroic gesture overshadows the fact that she ultimately failed. It weighed on her, of course. As my mother got older, she tried to find any scrap of information about my grandfather's fate and wrote about her belated grief. That best feeling in the world she'd enjoyed in the moments after having been spared had grown more complicated with age. I spend the morning in small discussion groups. Avoiding those reserved for survivors only, I join a session for second-generation descendants, 2Gs were called, titled, How Have Our Parents' Experiences in the Holocaust Influenced Who We Are? This, of course, is the very question I failed to answer for my mother. Our facilitator is the daughter of a survivor and also a psychotherapist. All the facilitators are therapists, as are a great many of the attendees. She counsels us not to retell our family story. We're here to address our own issues. But most of us find it impossible to share without first providing some context. One woman was born to a father who'd been a Kindertransport child, while her mother had grown up in a Japanese-American internment camp. Another is afraid we'll shun her because her Gentile uncle was a Nazi. Some of these contexts go on for quite a while. In fairness to the facilitator, though, it must be hard to interrupt the story of how a relative was tortured or killed and urge the speaker to get to the point. How many of you, she asks, were brought up to always have a valid passport because you never know when you might have to leave? Like on November 9th. Her joke about a still unthinkable outcome to the impending election gets a laugh. Nonetheless, a show of hands confirms that many in the room feel the need to have a getaway bag ready at all times. People begin to share their deeper feelings about growing up with a nameless fear, of being born into grief, of having lost the sense of what family is. Whenever someone wanders too deep into a family story, the facilitator tries to steer the conversation toward how our parents' experience affected us. She once had buttons made, she says, that read, I survived a survivor. This makes me wonder, did I have to survive my mother? Why don't you say something, I imagine her asking. What would I share? How, whenever I think about the bravery she summoned on behalf of her father, its towering standard of loyalty seems like one I could never live up to? I can't share this. In fact, whenever I consider speaking at all, my throat swells as if to shut off my voice, and I'm surprised and a little offended by my own frailty. But I don't share that either. Middle of page 234. Anu azefanim ve'ata rachum v'chanun. Anu kshei oref ve'ata erech apayim. Anu mle'ei avon ve'ata malei rachamim. Anu yameinu kitzel over ve'ata hu ushnotecha lo yitamu. Eloheinu ve'levotenu v'imotenu tavo lefanecha tfilatenu ve'al titala mitchinatenu. שאין אנחנו הזייפנים וכשי עורף לומר לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו אבל אנחנו ואבותינו ואמותינו חטאנו. We rise for the vidui, for the confession, top of page 235, Yeshamnu.
Rashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi. Ay, 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 ay. Avinu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker. Ay, 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 ay. Yatsnu Nara, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Maratnu, Niatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Hishinu Oref. Ay, 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 ay. Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu.
We abuse, we betray, we are cruel. We destroy, we embitter, we falsify. We gossip, we hate, we insult, we jeer, we kill, we lie, we mock, we neglect, we oppress, we pervert, we quarrel, we rebel, we steal, we transgress, we are unkind, we are violent, we are wicked, we are extremists, we yearn to do evil, we are zealous for bad causes. Sarnu mimitzvotecha mimishpatecha tovim velo shava lanu ve'ata tzadik al kol habaleinu ki emet asita ve'anachnu hirshanu. Page 236 on the bottom of the page. Ata yodea razeh olam v'talu mosi trei kochai. Ata chofes kol chadrei vatan uvochein chlayot v'alev. Ein davar nela mimeka, v'nistar mineged einecha. Uvechein yiratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi avotenu v'imotenu. Shetislach lanu al kol chatotenu, v'timcha lanu al kol avonotenu, u'techaper lanu al kol pishaenu. Mom Song is looking forward to our lunchtime speaker, the head of the University of Southern California's Shoah Foundation, which keeps an archive of survivors' video testimonies, including Mom Songs. In his presentation, the speaker demonstrates a recent technological advance, interactive holograms. Requiring 100 camera angles and 18 hours to prepare, they will allow visitors to the foundation or its website access to lifelike electronic respondents who can recognize and answer many questions. On a big screen at the front of the ballroom, the image of a survivor named Pinchas fields a sample query. Why didn't the Jews fight back? The projection of Pinchas grows livid as he proceeds to cite the many ways Jews did fight back, from disobeying discriminatory laws to fighting with camp guards, a pointed corrective to the idea that 6 million people were helplessly resigned to die. The demonstration goes over well, but I worry the legacy of the Holocaust will depend on whether future generations think to pose the right questions. Around the circle, several people bemoan their elderly parents' stubbornness. It seems child survivors who endured such chaos growing up are especially reluctant to lose autonomy in their old age. A guy in his 60s worries that his mom is no longer safe in her Florida condo and wants to move her closer to him. But maybe it's better to accept some risk, another attendee tells him, if it means letting his mother keep her independence. A woman across the room wants to know if it's wrong to be impatient for her increasingly belligerent father to die. What about you, urges my mother, trying to get my attention. My coma, my death? You must have some feelings on the subject. I am full of feelings on that subject. But instead of addressing them, I find myself making, in a tremulous voice, a broad point about how, when a survivor parent dies, we've lost the last buffer between ourselves and the terrifying responsibility of preserving the memory of the Holocaust. Just those few self-evident words leave me wrung out. But my mental mother is not impressed. Come on, she says, you're leaving out the good stuff. By which she means my crippling guilt over all the ways I let her down toward the end. My reluctance to be in charge of her living will. My short visits to see her in the hospital, because I was in the midst of a demanding journalism assignment. My squeamishness about anything to do with her bedpan. In the hour left before dinner, 2G and 3G descendants are invited to meet with a survivor for an informal Q&A. I skip this. My survivor mother-in-law and I have already agreed to meet at the hotel pool. The twilight sky is a deep blue, the November air is still warm. Floating on my back, I try to slow my heart rate by staring at the leaves of a lone palm tree, but it does little to calm me. I'm still thinking about my mother's last days. 21 years ago, I decided to move from the East Coast to Los Angeles because I'd fallen in love with Mom Song's eldest daughter. I'd arranged a teaching job here, and classes were to start in 2 months. Then my mother had a heart attack, and another. She would need bypass surgery. Fortunately, I hadn't moved yet. I stood with the surgeon behind his desk, looking at the images of my mother's clogged heart on his computer screen. This won't be easy, he said. Nonetheless, after more than 6 hours in the operating room, he seemed pleased with the results. I felt grateful to be in town to monitor my mother's care, but her recovery was slow. It didn't help that she would perform small acts of rebellion against the medical establishment, like hiding pills beneath her tongue after the nurse left, then tucking them into the soil of a potted plant. Why are you doing that? I asked. Because they're not necessary, she said. Pretty sure they are, I said. No, she said, the doctors just like to control everyone. Despite this, she improved enough to be transferred to a nursing facility. There was one in particular she wanted, and I nagged the hospital social worker to make it happen. She would receive physical therapy there for a number of weeks before we hoped going home. As my departure for the West Coast loomed closer, my mother and I both seemed to avoid the topic. One day, shortly before the move, she asked, "Are you planning to fly?" Her innocuous question seemed to veil larger concerns. "I'm planning to drive," I told her, a car being essential in LA. "But I can always fly back in an emergency." This is where we left things, murky and unstable. Perhaps we would have discussed it further, maybe even come to a more agreeable resolution. But sometime in the night, as she worried no doubt about my leaving, a blood vessel burst in my mother's brainstem, plunging her into a coma. She was rushed back to the hospital, where I found her being wheeled on a gurney, unresponsive. Page 239. Al tazveinu avinu, ve'al titcheinu bareinu, ve'al taznicheinu yotzreinu, ve'al ta'as imanu, kala kechatotenu. V'kayem lanu Adonai Eloheinu et hadavar shivtachtanu b'kabbalah. Al yedei Yirmiyahu chosecha kamur, b'yamim ahem uva'et hahi, Neum Adonai, Yevukash et avon Yisrael ve'enenu, Berchatot Yehuda ve'lo timsena, Ki eslach lasher ashir, Amecha v'nachlatcha rivei tuvcha, Tzme'ei chasecha te'evei yishecha, Yakiru ve'edu ki l'Adonai Eloheinu, Harachamim v'haslichot. Misha Ana, in the middle of page 240. Misha Ana l'sara imenu beziknata hu yaneinu. Shana le'Avraham Avinu Behar HaMoriah Hu Yaneinu. Mi Shana le'Yitzchak Begam Nakar al Gabe Mizbeach Hu Yaneinu. Mi Shana le'Rivka Beher Yonah Hu Yaneinu. Mi Shana leYaakov bebeit El Hu Yaneinu.
shana leyosef beveit ha'asurim hu yanenu mi shana lemiyaldot ha'ivriot alav naim hu yanenu mi shana leyochevet al sefat hayor hu yanenu mi shana lavotenu ve'imotenu ayam suf hu yanenu mi shana leMoshe bechorev hu yanenu mi shana leMiriam beveira hu yanenu mi shana leAharon b'machta hu yanenu mi shana lePhinchas b'kumo metoch ha'eda hu yanenu mi shana levenot sof echad be'amdan petach ohel moed hu yanenu mi shana lechol hatzadikim ve'hatzadikot ve'achasidim ve'achasidot ve'hatmimim ve'hatmimot ve'hayesharim ve'hayesharot ve'harachmanim ve'harachminiot hu yanenu.
Page 242, the bottom of the page. Rachamana danei alaniyeneina Rachamana danei lemakichei rucha aneina Rachamana danei litvirei liba aneina Rachamana aneina Rachamana chus Rachamana peruk Rachamana shazev Rachamana rachem alan Hashta ba'agala Uvizaman kari. After dinner in the grand ballroom, dining tables are being rolled away to make room for the evening's promised highlight, Jewish folk dancing. Soon the floor is roiling with an immense hora, a circle dance. Mom Song stands on the sidelines, imitating the steps, clearly eager to join in. You'll have to dance with her, my wife warned, knowing my many aversions include crowds and klezmer music. But having no wish to squander my provisional status as a good son, I turn to my mother-in-law and shout, "Shall we?" We're in the thick of it now, bumping into this stranger and that. The man in the fisherman's cap, the one who told me the problem of his life, dances past, grinning. The circle contracts before expanding again, and I get the appeal of the dance, but it would be a lie to suggest I feel any disappointment when, a half hour later, Mom Song decides to go back to her room. As we prepare to leave, she glances around and realizes she's mislaid her bag. "Mine was blue," she adds helpfully. My heart sinks as I realize she means her generations together tote, identical to hundreds of others in the room. "Blue, you say?" Immediately I regret the barb in my tone, the breaking of my vow to be patient. Bag by bag, we search for hers. After finding it, we head upstairs to our separate rooms, and I take a sleeping pill and go to bed. My mother's living will was intended to help her avoid any needless suffering. Given the bleak prognosis of a brainstem coma, she could die at any moment, I was told. The diagnosing physician advised we forego a feeding tube and limit treatment to pain relief. But when the neurologist on call finally weighed in, and I sought to clarify whether we'd embarked on the right course of action, or in this case, inaction, he may have heard in my inchoate question the grumbling of some future plaintiff, because he assured me they could certainly intubate her going forward if I wanted. If I wanted? Deep in my chest, some blood vessel of my own seemed to burst, releasing every thought and feeling I could have about my mother. Among them, a needling concern over how her condition might affect my teaching commitment, quickly followed by the desperate scramble to brush aside that unworthy distraction. I told the neurologist what I wanted was to make the right decision. We went over the major points again, the certainty of the diagnosis, the provisions of her living will, before he concluded that given the scant odds of any decent quality of life, the correct medical response was indeed to let my mother go. Although I'd been told she could die at any moment, my mother did not die that first day, nor the next. It occurred to me that she was just as stubborn in her coma as she'd been while awake. By the 6th or 7th day, my visits were growing less frequent. Practical concerns got in the way, such as arrangements for her memorial and for my drive across the country, which, depending on when she did eventually die, might need to be pushed back. And I needed to prepare for the class I was teaching. Many times over the years, I have wished that when my mother asked, "Are you flying?" my answer had been, "No, I'm going to tell them I can't come." That's what a good son would have done. Page 243, Avinu Malkeinu, as the ark is opened. We rise. Avinu Malkeinu, chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, lenu melech ha'atzah, Avinu Malkeinu. I invite you to repeat each of these lines after me. Avinu Malkeinu, achazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, achazirenu b'tshuva shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shelach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shelach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zachrenu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zachrenu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer gula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer geula v'yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zichuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zechuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer silicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer selicha u'mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu, smach l'nishar b'kol Avinu Malkeinu. sing together the top of page 244, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu va'anenu ki ein banu ma'asim, Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu va'anenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu va'anenu, ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu va'anenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu va'anenu, ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Sunday, November 6th. After waking from my drug-induced sleep, my dependence on such pills has only grown over the years. I drag myself to a breakfast panel on the future of Israel. The Holy Land once united the Jews, but less so now, the audience is told. While older American Jews tend to view Middle East politics through the lens of the Holocaust, the younger see it through the lens of human rights and the plight of Palestinians. The discussion leaves me more confused than ever. It's of only limited consolation to hear one speaker admire the Jewish mind's ability to hold two opposing ideas at once and still make lunch. He urges us to cherish that gift and not to cut out of our lives people with whom we disagree. At least, he jokes, the campaign has come along to reunite us. During the morning's 2G discussion, our facilitator asks if the election has sparked people's fears. A near-unanimous show of hands confirms that most of us are distressed by the campaign with its overtones of fascism and anti-Semitism. Have we been inclined to downplay the fact that we're Jewish? Always, my mother shouts from the afterlife. Once again, the question about getaway bags is raised. I'm warming to the idea. We talk about losing loved ones, and a woman asks if anyone is thinking of cremation. The question elicits an audible gasp, since cremation not only breaks with Jewish tradition, but carries the whiff of death camp expediency. Nevertheless, several hands go up, including mine. One woman says she's planning to have her ashes scattered in the ocean, so her children can live anywhere in the world and still be connected to her. The woman who initially asked the question says her survivor parents wanted to be cremated because that's what had become of their parents. My mother had no interest in burial, and a year after her death, I brought her ashes to her beloved Maine. After much searching, I found what seemed like a secluded spot, and kneeling, offered a fistful of her to the water. But the wind was strong and blew much of the ash back into my face, which was sticky with tears. No matter how far I leaned forward, only a fraction of her made it safely to the sea, the rest scattering to the wind. As my sobs rose to an appalling volume, a family of tourists appeared. I saw them hurry past, trying not to look. This afternoon, Mom Song wants to try another intergenerational dialogue. And because it's our last chance to attend a session together, I join her. Crammed with some 60 others in a tight circle, we're shutting off our cell phones when someone calls out, "FBI clears Clinton, again." The headline generates more than a few sighs of relief. One first-generation survivor from Germany tells those of us destined to outlive her that it's not enough to remember the Holocaust. She's worried about the anti-Semitism unleashed by the presidential campaign. People need to stand up to it. I noticed Mom Song wrestling with the decision of whether to speak. At the last second, she rises. Her own observations of the next generation, she says, have been far less rosy. Silently, I offer up a stingy prayer that whatever story she's about to tell won't stray too far into the weeds. But she stays very much on point. When her testimony was filmed by the Shoah Foundation, Mom Song says her children were asked to include written statements. But the younger daughter, then a 32-year-old medical resident, could bring herself to write just 3 anguished lines. As for the eldest child, my future wife, Mom Song recounts how a therapist urged this daughter to take a pillow from the couch and address it as though she were speaking to her mother's childhood self. "What would you say to her?" the therapist asked, causing the daughter to scoff, but then, seconds later, to weep uncontrollably. Like her sister, she carried terrible guilt at being unable to protect their mother from the suffering she'd had to endure. It's not rational, of course, Mom Song tells the room, but rationality has nothing to do with it. For years, she felt her own guilt over having transmitted this trauma to her children. Then she heard other children of survivors express the same burden, at which point her guilt crystallized into anger toward those who'd caused her family so much pain. And she stopped blaming herself, which may be one of the gifts of a conference like this. On the 10th day of my mother's coma, I received a call from the nursing facility that her fever was spiking and the end was surely near. I called 2 of her closest friends and met them there. They'd brought food, in case we might be a while, and set it up at the foot of her bed because my mother loved picnics. Several hours passed. Everyone took turns holding her hand, made warm by the fever, and dabbing her lips with ice chips. But evening began to fall. My mother's friends had family waiting at home, and I was supposed to take care of some trivial errand for the memorial service. I wondered, to my fellow vigil keepers, if this had been another false alarm, and eventually suggested maybe we should return in the morning. In so doing, I missed my mother's final breath. Did she awaken, I've often wondered, just long enough to reach for my hand, to wonder where I was and why I'd abandoned her? As I toss and turn on my last night in the Woodland Hills Marriott, I begin to grasp that someday, as I'm facing whatever death awaits me, I'm destined to cry out for her forgiveness, and that the problem of my life, as that survivor put it, has been to pretend otherwise. Kaddish Shalem, page 245. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba Be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chaychonu v'yamechonu v'chay d'chol Beit Yisrael B'agalav v'zman kariv v'imaru amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach Le'olam le'olmei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnasei V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudasha b'richu Le'ila, le'ila, min kol berchata v'shirata, tishbechata v'nechmata, damiran be'olma ve'imaru, amen. Titgabat zloton uvaoton d'chol Yisrael kadam, avon mishmai v'imru, amen. Yehei shlom rabba min shemai v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imaru, amen. We rise for the Aleinu, page 246. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'teit gedula l'yotzer breishit shelo asanu kigoyei haratzon velo samanu kimishpechot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishachavim u'modim Okay, nekabel echad Adonai Eloheinu, lira mehira b'tiferet zech. Kakatuv b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol ha'aretz. Bayom hahu, bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad. U'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad. Those who are in mourning or who are observing a yortzeit, we gather on page 247 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uve'yomechon uve'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela, le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'olma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Can be seated. Monday, November 7th. On the final morning, we watch a short film about a group of Romanian survivors who returned to Transylvania. Mom Song has willed herself to come downstairs early so as not to miss the closing ceremonies. And once more, we meet in the grand ballroom. We join hands to form one last circle and sing a few more of the old songs. But soon I feel my mother-in-law tighten her grip. I was afraid they were going to pick this one, she says, referring to the partisan song, whose lyrics begin, "Never say this is the final road for you." Mom Song whispers hoarsely in my ear. It's what they sang as they were marching into the gas chambers. Despite a lifetime of being haunted by that shadow, she finds it in herself to remember all the words and belt them out. Tomorrow, of course, will bring the election, followed by reports of swastikas in Philadelphia, mothers warning their daughters not to wear the hijab, blacks being called the N-word, Mexicans being taunted with the prospect of a border wall, Asians being told to go back to Asia. We will awaken on that Wednesday to a crueler world than many of us had anticipated, a world that, aside from casting my symbolic California ballot, I had done nothing to prevent. Some of my students will come to class in tears, one of them having been called a faggot just moments earlier in the street. A young Latina who has undocumented relatives on one side of her family will be stunned that her white grandparents voted differently than she did. How can I ever face them, she'll ask. The question will not be rhetorical. My students, desperate for counsel, will stare wet-eyed at me and wait for wisdom. I'll urge the young Latina not to shun her grandparents, since we only get 4, but to be open with them about her heartbreak. I'll offer this advice because it's what my mother would have said, and because it would please her, if she were watching, to know that I had learned from her how to be of some small help. Psalm 27, the David Adonai Orivi Ishi, page 248. We sing together 7 lines from the top of the page. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai, ota vakesh. There is one thing I ask of Adonai, and this I seek. Shifti beveit Adonai, kol yemei chayai. Let me dwell in the house of God all the days of my life. Let me dwell in a house of love. Let me dwell in a house of justice. Let me dwell in a house of dignity and freedom and peace all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the divine and to visit in such a sanctuary.
אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. שיתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לילה, 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 לילה,
Lecha Eli is a beautiful piyut that we sing on this night of Kold Nidre. We regret that it doesn't appear in the Machzor. Words written long ago that reflect the sense of intimacy, the sense of longing, the sense of oneness that we seek between us and the divine, between us and ourselves, and between us and one another. On this night of return, this night of reunification.
Lecha Eli teshukati becha cheshki ve'avati lecha libi vechilyotai lecha ruchi Nishmati lecha yadai lecha raglai uminahi techunati lecha atzmi lecha dami ve'urim Verayonai Vetsurati Vetavniti Lecha Ruchi Lecha Kochi Umiftachli Vetikvati Lecha Eli Teshukati Behacheshki Ve'avati Lecha Libi Vechilyotai
invite everyone to join us here again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for our Yom Kippur Shacharit service, which will include the Yizkor prayers, the prayers of remembrance following the Torah service. We will regather after the end of our morning service. After a break, we'll gather at 5:15 p.m. for a very special Mincha study session led by Tali Farhadi and Weinstein. There was a source sheet that was sent out in our email information, which can be downloaded. The title of her session will be Mercy in Law Enforcement, and it will be based on her teaching us a series of rabbinic texts on divine mercy and the ways in which mercy is exercised in both human and divine law enforcement. At 6:20, we'll begin our signature celebratory Ne'ilah. Here at Sha'ar, we embrace very deeply and very humbly the Talmudic teaching that Yom Kippur is in fact the happiest day of the year. It is the most joyous day of the year because it is a day on which we believe that we are granted, after deep reflection and heartfelt prayers, that we are in fact granted forgiveness and granted the opportunity to begin again. So Ne'ilah at 6:20 p.m. and the fast ending at 7:23 p.m. It is our tradition here at Sha'ar, on this night of Kold Nidre, to spend a little bit of time at this point in the dark, to create a little bit more inner intimacy under the cover of night, to cry out our regrets, to give voice to our remorse, to our shame, and to our pleas for forgiveness. I often tell the story about how at the Chabad in Miami, usually on Shabbat afternoons when the light is waning, there is a Shabbat timer that is set not for the lights to come on, but for the lights to go off. So that at that most auspicious time of the day on Shabbat afternoon, when Shabbat is about to take its leave and we're filled with heartfelt feelings and emotions that people can, under the cover of darkness, give greater voice, exude greater feeling. And we too, tonight, on this night of Kold Nidre, we sit tonight under the darkened sky, usually in a darkened room, and we sing for just a little bit longer. In the Kabbalah, we learn that the celestial dark, this celestial dark, is primordial, that it predates all light, and that when God chose to reveal God's self, light radiated outward so that God would become visible. But beyond the light, the dark was still there. And that dark is the domain of God's essence, and the essence that doesn't require light. It doesn't lack luminescence, but it transcends it. Well, we often talk about light as bringing clarity. Sometimes darkness can bring closeness. We feel closer to the divine essence within us, feeling closer to our own selves, to our potential to do better, to be more of whom it is that we know we are capable of being, to come closer to our potential to live our best lives. So if it's in your practice on Yom Tov, I invite you to turn down the lights. We will sing only nigunim, wordless melodies. Again, remember what I shared on Rosh Hashanah. Now, the Rebbe taught, singing nigunim without words is much harder than singing songs with words, because the onus is on us to script them with the insides of our hearts and our souls.
Nine, 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 nine. Oh, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Oh, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Ay na na ay na na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Ay na na ay na na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Ya na na na, ay na na, ay na na, ya na 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 na, ya na na na. Oh, ya na na. Ya na na na, oh, ya na na na, ya na na na.
We close the Song of Peace.
Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yase Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kol yoshvei Tevel.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
See you tomorrow.